Hello and welcome to the ESCAPUZZLED podcast, your one-stop shop for all things escape rooms, immersive entertainment, tabletop and virtual escapes. Today you're joined as always by me, Corey, and my co-host Elena.
Hello, it's lovely to hear you.
And also joining us today is Brendan Mills, the director of Escape Plan in East London. Established back in July 2015, Escape Plan has expanded to now host 4 World War II themed escape rooms: Push for Time, The Battle for Britain, The Adventure Begins, and Roll Out the Barrel. Later also moving into board game genre with Stop the Train and Hit the Silk. How are we doing today, Brendan? Are you well?
Yeah, we're really good, thank you.
How's things in London? Like a whole 8 hours away from us.
Well, I'm currentently in Kent, in my hometown, but so I can't speak for London right now. But on the whole, yeah, we're doing good at Escape Plan. We've launched the 4th game this year, which you introduced as a World War II game, but actually it's not set in World War II. So our 4th game, we wanted to deviate a little bit from our normal modus operandi, and we decided that we're going to build a time machine, and this time machine could have taken Escape Plan back to any period in history. And we decided on just before the war in the 1920s. This is Push for Time. Roll the Barrel set at the end of the war on Victory Day with a rather ridiculous plot to steal a barrel of beer from your senior officers because they don't want to include you in their celebrations. So they became with this plot. But that's so the other 3 games are very much steeped in 1940s history, and Push for Time is a little bit different for us. We're expanding out to other time periods.
It certainly gives a lot more scope for other time travel adventures as well.
It does. And actually, one of our aspirations with this game is to look at a more episodic adventure. So perhaps potentially revisiting parts of the game with lots of new areas that have changed when you come back for your second episode.
Oof. I do love it when an escape room draws from previous escape rooms, whether it's changes in the same room that then expand the story, or whether it's an entirely new room that sort of pays homage to the original. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, I like it too. You've got to be careful that you're giving enough new content and not looking like you're just cutting costs and providing kind of a new story within the same set, because I think a lot of the interest and the fun of an escape room is actually trying to discover a new area. Hey, we've never been here before. What's this place all about? That's like a really big draw for people into escape rooms, much more than new puzzles. So you kind of have to have both, but I think you have to walk the line carefully if you want to use the same set.
It's certainly why I find it so impressive that you guys have 3 games themed around the 1940s, because as far as I'm aware, the World War, there's not much scope for escape roomage, but you guys have managed to push out 3 completely different adventures, which is incredibly impressive to have such unique content that people can flow between and not feel like they're doing the same room.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think 2 of them were born out of a vision. So when we first launched, it was important to us that we had a point of difference. And we thought if we go a bit more niche down the kind of the 1940s World War II route, we might have a bit of standout. And then once we were kind of like invested in that with our brand, it kind of sort of made sense to then go and make the second game. So the Prisoner of War camp is kind of a nod to the Great Escape, but it features the diary, not a real diary, but a fictional diary of my wife's grandfather, Bob Hales. So then I thought, well, I want my grandparents to get in on the action. And they met at an RAF.
That's such a love story.
Yeah, and we visited the Battle of Britain bunker in Uxbridge just for sort of, I'm not sure why we did it. It was sort of like we were a small team then with 3 or 4 of us. And it was almost like a team day out. But we went into there and we got very inspired by the idea of the operations tape. And I think Battle for Britain was born from that visit, just being inspired by. I wasn't particularly interested in 1940s history before Escape Plan. I was like, it was interesting, but I wasn't, well read on it. So those 2 games have definitely come about by interest and design once we've made a decision to move into the 1940s. Roll Out the Barrel is a completely different story. It's set in the 1940s, but it's almost birthed by mistake. It was we had this kind of experiment of a game. It was closer really to a game show than it was an escape room, and we ran it across the Christmas period to try and attract some of the corporate interests and try and get some bigger groups through, because at the time we were just 1, maybe 2 escape rooms. And we weren't drawing the large audiences in. So we had this brainwave that people could solve puzzles whilst they were drinking.
Not sure that's a good idea, but sounds like something I'd get involved in.
It transpired that it wasn't a good idea, actually. Um, and we had this wild experiment of us kind of being GMs in the room with the players, walking around and checking if they're sort of like solving the puzzles correctly. And it made us all feel like a bunch of school teachers. And it was just this horrible failed experiment. But at the end of it, it was this exciting kind of semi-cooperative, semi-competitive element of trying to put these barrels down this device that we created, with the main objective of your team dropping the barrel in a certain bucket at the bottom. And that part worked quite well, and it was fun, but the puzzles that preceded it didn't really mix well with the alcohol. Anyway, after this kind of experiment, we ran for about 4 weeks. We ended up with two things. One, a knowledge that more people were into, more corporates were into this market than we thought. This was back in 2017, I think it was, 2018. And the second knowledge was, well, we've got all these assets now, we probably better use them. So we harvested all the content from this weird game show and made this escape room out of it. We went back to what we do better, which is cooperative escape rooms. And so Roll Out the Barrel was born from that kind of bizarre relationship.
Like a Franken escape room. We've just taken parts and stapled it together and made this wonderful monster of an escape room.
I mean, a lot of escape rooms need to be built that way, don't they? They need to not work first before
Happy
they really
accidents.
work.
That's what it is.
Yeah, there's a marked difference there between making a board game and making an escape room, is that when you make a board game, you've got to get it right and then send it out. Because once it's out there, you can't change it. However, an escape room, you can mess about with it a bit. So if you launch something that isn't quite perfect, you get more opportunity to look at it. You can say in 100 games time, actually, do you know what's going to really work is that. And sometimes you depend on like a customer's idea. There's like a customer misinterprets one of your puzzles, some sort of ambiguity is found. And then you look at it and think, that would be incredible if we made that instead. So sometimes you draw inspiration from the customer visit.
Did a few ideas come from drunken customers? Because I feel like a lot of people tend to have their best ideas, and some of their worst, let's be honest, when they're intoxicated.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case in this, but...
Not in London, apparently.
but it's amazing what happens sometimes. If you get somebody who's pretty smart and they come drunk, one of two things can happen. They sober up and they go through 15 hard minutes of sweat and then just buzz through the escape room like a demon. Or it's a complete assisted walkthrough with me on the microphone for about 45 to 60 minutes that are available.
Holding their hand the entire game.
Exactly.
Well, before we delve so deeply into your rooms, and I am incredibly excited to delve into them, we do have a few quickfire questions just to run through that tend not to be quickfire, let's be honest, but we'll try and keep them as quickfire as possible. So our first one of which is, as always, our player stereotypes. We put out a blog post a little while ago of the different stereotypes that we found within escape rooms, and we found a lot of people tend to fit into a mixture of these different stereotypes. Some people don't fit into any of them and have added their own. So what would you say is your player stereotype within an escape room?
Yeah, I fall into that second group, Corey. I think I refer to myself as the commentator. So I report on events as they unfold in a mildly annoying manner for the rest of my team.
I love this. So is it every time somebody opens something, you're like, this person is putting a number in, and now we have a sheet?
No, not quite as factual as that. Slightly more irreverent. Attempting to almost draw people out of the world, particularly if I find something that is jarring about the experience. I will just try and enjoy that moment of it not being quite right.
Almost narrating like the game.
Yeah, a little bit, particularly with horror games. I don't like horror games especially, but I will commentate on horror games just to distract myself from the kind of like, if I start to feel like it's too real, then I might actually get scared.
I do that too. I'm like, oh, there is a head that is moving in the closet. Let's shut that door.
Have you played a game called Crevacar? It was down in Dover at, I think at the time they were called Get Lost, but I think they changed their name to Escape Boat.
Very welcoming title.
Such a brilliant name.
But it was I think it's subsequently been now called Escape Goat, I think.
Yes.
It's run by a lady in Dover called Kimberly. She's absolutely delightful. She created this game called Crevacar. It was a horror game. And I was beginning to feel a little bit terrified in this game. And it's a zombie game. And I think it's closed now, so I think I can do spoilers. But there's a point when you're walking into a new space and you're pretty certain you're going to encounter an entity, probably a zombie. And in the room, they've equipped you with these plastic blue guns, which look very much like water pistols. And the amount of bravery that I managed to muster from holding one of these plastic guns was huge. I was happy to walk into any space as long as I had my blue gun. And that's the kind of thing I enjoy about an escape room. It's just when you've got that moment of like, we kind of like, the situation we're in is ridiculous. We have to talk about it.
I feel like being given any prop in an escape room, I get so unbelievably excited. Like if there's something that just looks fun or cool to play with, or if I have to shoot something with a Nerf gun in an escape room, whoa, I don't know, it just hits different.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, Nerf gun's a good shout. I haven't seen that one yet, but I'm looking forward to it now.
Ooh. Oh, maybe it's a spoiler. I know a game that you need to use some Nerf guns to receive something.
Helena, did you say something about a spider in there? Did I mishear that?
No.
That was definitely misheard. I don't do spiders. I draw the line at spiders. You put a real spider in your game, done for.
No.
I'm burning the place down.
The amount of people that would ring me and be like, do you have any snakes in your games? Or do you have any birds in your games? Which was quite funny. Oh, yeah. Like, they're obviously terrified of them. And I've got a lovely bird called Cornelius in one of my games. He is a stuffed bird. And
Just to
somebody
clarify
made...
for Peter.
I don't have a real Cornelius flying about. However, I had to put a bin over the bird to like hide it from a guest. She was so scared of it. I was like, oh, you'll just crawl at you for the whole game. You're going to hate your clue sound.
I like to include in my briefing, if people ask a question, not that I brief a great deal these days, but I like to include, if they ask the question, is it scary? I always counter with, would you like me to remove? And then I think of some terrifying object that I've not thought of before. Would you like me to remove the vampire or the tiger or whatever I can think of?
Would you like me to take out the live bear? He is chained up, but there's been a few times he's gotten very close. If I'm thinking correctly, Escapegoat have another horror game called The Morgue, which also, I think it's Escapegoat, offers an extreme variation. I assume that's not something that you'll be partaking in anytime soon, Brendan.
Yes, I've got an interesting relationship with horror games because I don't like to think about horror things after the experience. So when I was like in my 20s, I watched The Ring, and then that night I had a dream which included one of the scenes from and I didn't really want that kind of information in my head anymore. So I've kind of like said to myself, horror's not a good thing for me because I tend to think about it later. I have to concede that horror themes pay so much attention to atmosphere and they make me feel stuff that other escape rooms don't make me feel. So I kind of like that tension that you experience. So I wouldn't go and book it, but at the same time, if people booked it and said, right, you're coming, I'd still go.
Oh, Helena.
That goes perfectly onto what is your favourite theme in escape rooms?
I was saying, should we just book it and drag Brendan along? Watch him squirm.
I went to podcast, you went to murder.
Sorry.
Favorite theme? I don't really have a favorite theme. I respect anything that's different and out of the ordinary. So stuff that someone has no right mind in creating. That's the stuff I like. Just it's original. It's just someone's idea, rather than I've made a different variant of something that we know about already. The only favorite I've got a weakness for is dinosaurs.
Ooh, I don't think I've ever played a dinosaur game. Are there any in particular that spring to mind that we need to play?
I've only played one, but I'm aware of three. The one I've played is now closed. That was at the Panic Room in Great Fair. That was called Dino Land, and it was just a lovely kind of romp around a facility, a little bit like Jurassic Park. And there were people dressed as dinosaurs running after you, and it was great.
No
There was
way.
deep in the room as well. It was like the whole thing. It was high enough budget to make it entertaining and low enough to make it amusing.
That sounds absolutely phenomenal.
There are two others I'm aware of. One I think is in Chippenham. I think they're called 11th Hour Escapes, but I've not been there, not played anything. And the other one, which I'm very keen to play, is over in Chatham. Hysteria. Big shout out for Hysteria. Some of my favourite escape rooms there. They're known for the basement particularly, but they released a game recently I can't remember what it's called. I think it's no. I've got no idea what it's called. I just know it's dinosaur themed. I didn't even need to know the name of it. I was like, it's dinosaur themed. We're going.
Hey, if there's any reason to get me to an escape room, dinosaurs is pretty up there. Like,
Yeah, I didn't realize I was so easily like dragged into the back of a van, but it's for dinosaur escape rooms apparently.
Is it true? Sorry, about dragged into the back of a van. Is it true? Because I give this anecdote occasionally because I heard it from
Okay.
somebody else. I feel like it needs verifying. That there's a game. It might be in Prague or it might be somewhere else in Europe where the game starts. You're in a basement of a car park and you wait there as directed by your email. And the first thing that happens is a van pulls up. 3 or 4 big guys get out and bundle you in the back of this van, and you're just praying to God, I hope this is the start of the game. And a random kidnapping that's going on.
I've heard of several escape rooms that
Yeah.
do this, and to be fair, it both sounds absolutely phenomenal and super immersive, and simultaneously absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know whether fight or flight would kick in that situation, or whether it'd be like, oh, I'm looking forward to this. Either I'm going to enjoy the situation and be like, oh, great, escape room, or I'm going to throw hands and I don't know which one it's going to be until the moment.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of like horror immersive experiences are now starting. I've done like 3 now that have been bundled into the back of the van, bagged, driven around like crazy on a field, and like started the whole horror maze almost crying.
Oh yeah, Psychopath up here. The
Psychopath's
haunt
one of them,
attraction.
yeah.
You get a bag put over your head, you get put in the back of a van, and they drive you around cornfields for a while before just throwing you out into the wilderness
that
to
might have
explore
been-
the horrors that lie within.
Yeah, that might have been the one I cried on.
Yeah,
And there was someone.
sensational.
Oh, it's a really, really good immersive experience. If you guys want to go do it.
I don't run any horror escape rooms at all. But I have an idea which would be very cruel for a horror room. So if you're running a horror game, what you do is you offer a safe word during the briefing. And then at the point during which the experience gets too much and the safe word is mentioned, you deny knowledge of the safe word. And
Ooh. Oh. Alternatively, you take them out of said room and bundle them into a different room, which is a different escape room, but is part of the same branch and brings you background and is potentially even worse. And there's no safe word for the second room because you already used it in the first one.
Corey, you and I never make an escape room together.
No, it sounds very dangerous.
I feel like I'll just be rocking in the corner, like, come on, guys.
Again, we were speaking to the wonderful team from the Cager Express podcast, and they were saying they did an escape room where you had to wear a dog shock collar, and throughout the escape room you were electrocuted.
I forgot
Which
about that.
to me
Oh my
sounds
God.
sensational. To the normal human being, it sounds dreadful.
Wow.
Yeah, that's next level intense. But in all
Yeah.
fairness, that is America, and they have very different regulations on health and safety over there.
Yeah. Which city is it in? Asking for a friend?
I think it got shut down for
I think, yeah, it
obvious
got
reasons.
shut down. Well, actually, it didn't get shut down. They just closed
They
the
just
game.
they just closed up. It didn't get shut down.
And I think it actually closed down this year. And when we were speaking to them, they had just recently gone back to replay it because it was like a game show game. So they went back to replay it before it closed. So it's gone now, I'm afraid.
It does sound sensational. If anybody is listening and they're looking to build an escape room or have their own, and they're looking for something a little unique,
Chocolate.
there's an idea. Just to quickly touch on the point of US regulations for things like that. There's an incredible documentary. I think it's by a company called 13th Door in America. They're a haunted attraction, and their haunt attractions are ridiculous. They are like borderline not okay. Obviously there's the likes of McCamey Manor where you are like physically assaulted and fed rotten food and they can do literally anything to you, which is not okay in itself. But this one, at one point you get put into a room, you stand with your back against a wall and a plastic sheet drops from the ceiling and pins you against the wall. The air is then sucked out from like the sheet and you can't breathe for like 10 seconds and then they
Oh
release
my
you.
God. No.
Or they have a room that rotates like a full 360 and you are literally like slamming into the walls and the floor as it rotates. There's a room where you again have shock collars on and you electrocute each other. You sat in a big circle and you can see who's electrocuted you so that you can then just target each other. It's absolutely mental. But the documentary is basically a behind the scenes of how they get from concept to scare maze, and it performs incredibly well every single year. It always sells out. So they're doing something right, and the American audience are absolute lunatics. In the nicest way possible.
Well, give the people what they want.
Exactly. I mean, if that's what they want, strange, but fair enough.
Nope.
That's where we draw the line.
Don't give them that, actually. Just you tell that last statement. Just be kind to your guests.
Yeah. Kindness is also nice.
I wonder what the reviews are like.
The reviews are all really good. I went on and had a look. Yeah, obviously you sign a waiver beforehand that discloses like anything could happen to you. Like they have a guy in there who occasionally will just tattoo guests or
What?
will shave their head, or like you sign a waiver to say I'm okay with this. Like it's absurd.
That's mad. The worst I've seen was actually one of my colleagues. We were playing The Butcher up in ESCAPUZZLED in
It's
Nottingham.
like top of my list. I absolutely love horror games, so The Butcher's one of the top of my list. But judging by the way you just started this story, that might change.
Well, because it was early days in the escape room kind of industry, and Simon Stokes, the owner, threw together with a couple of other people a sort of an unconference type event. And after the event, the next day, we all kind of piled into the escape rooms at Escape-Logic. And I didn't get to actually, I did get to play The Butcher, but I chose not to. I played a different game. But my colleague Carlos went in there, and I think because the venue knew that all of the guests were escape room owners and staff, they decided to ramp up the intensity of how the Butcher was going to behave when he came back to his sort of serial killer's flat that you walk into. And so my colleague was called Carlos, and he's quite dramatic at the worst of times. So he didn't know where to hide, so he hid in this cupboard because it's obviously primed. So you've got to hide somewhere. Hey, there's a wardrobe. Let's hide in that. The Butcher, who's a good double his size in both directions, opens the wardrobe and just grabs him by his, I guess, his collar, lifts him off his shoes off the ground, Jaws in James Bond, and then puts him down somewhere, not gently, grabs his shoe, takes it off him, and deposits the shoe in Carlos's mouth. All the while, Carlos is trying to escape, and it's pitch black as well. She was terrified and screaming, and he's got an audience of about sort of 10 other escape room owners watching it, laughing in the background through the CCTV. Yeah, he actually knocked his leg on a piece of furniture and was limping around escape plan after that.
Please tell me you got that CCTV footage.
I didn't even see it, actually. I was in a different game.
No way.
I should probably ask. So I'm sure he doesn't have CCTV from a game that's like 7 years ago. But
Yeah.
the story is enough of an anecdote. I don't need the footage.
That sounds sensational. Giving me all the more reason to get down the budget.
Probably at this point, I should actually say to the listeners, like, none of this happens at Escape Plan. We're completely veered off what Escape Plan does.
Yeah, sure. That's what they all say.
Around.
Obviously, you touched upon the fact that you're not a massive fan of horror rooms. Do you have a least favorite theme or anything that you sort of shy away from?
Well, I mean, I have written horror down there as my kind of answer, really. Horror is my least favorite theme. But at the same time, I think I need to find a new least favorite kind of room. So I think maybe the jury's out on that one. So horror's there as a placeholder, but it doesn't really deserve to be.
We've mentioned this many a time on the podcast. I feel like fear is such a strong emotion that you can't really recreate anything as strong as it, especially in an escape room environment. Obviously, you can create joy and excitement, but I feel like fear is just so unbelievably more heightened. It's like going on a roller coaster. You can't get that feeling anywhere but a roller coaster. Being able to experience almost a horror film or a horror game in person as though you're there. There's nothing like it without actually being tortured and murdered, which probably isn't as fun as escape rooms.
I don't know. I think the emotion attached to satisfaction at the right time can be just as strong. So I think if you are waiting for something to happen and there's a time limit against you, and that thing happens in that satisfying way at that moment, enabling your, either your last minute escape or just the thing that you wanted to see happen has unfolded at the right time. I think that's potentially can probably beat fear as a mechanic in the game. It's just much, much harder to execute. And it's a bit more of a holy grail, I think. I think a lot of people want to make that emotive feeling for customers, but it's difficult when they've got their minds focused on puzzles to also have them focused in a world and a story. So you can't achieve it with any regularity. But I think I think love is stronger than fear, I think, is the cliche I'm attaching to that.
I think it's difficult as well to try and get 5 people's, I mean, assuming that there's a team of 5, for example, to get 5 people all looking in the same place at the same time to have the same experience at any one time in an escape room, especially of that kind of form, whereas fear is more a general thing that you can wash over a room, which, why, as you say, it is certainly more of a holy grail to be able to give somebody that joyous, satisfying experience.
Yeah, it has to be connected to more theatre, doesn't it? There has to be like a more theatrical moment, which is almost anticipated and then witnessed by a whole group. I think we're fortunate enough that in one of our games, actually in 2 of our games, that happens to a degree. There's a finale in one of our games, and there's also like a transition moment in one other one, which you all witness in the same way at the same time. You're kind of forced into by the flow of the game. So I wouldn't like to say that we've actually, kind of created the best ever kind of transition or ending to a game, but I think it's possible to achieve. It just takes a lot more thought, and it often just takes the right idea. It isn't even about the planning and the execution. Sometimes it's just about the idea.
I think it really adds to an experience, though, having a shared experience of that level. So I think bringing a team together, like you say, to have like a shared moment, a shared memory is really nice, because at 90% of an escape room, you haven't got a clue what's going on elsewhere in the room. Like, I couldn't tell you what half of the puzzles are by the time I get to it at the end of an escape room, because somebody else solves them and they got the satisfying clunk and they got to see something drop, or they put something in water and something appears. Like, it's not something that everybody gets to witness. So to be able to have something like that in a room and have it at such a pivotal moment is such a really nice thing.
Yeah, I agree. But there's also something exhilarating about what you're describing, about this chaos going on around you. You're not in touch with all of it at all, but you know that you're all collaborating and contributing towards this joint mission. So, and that can make you kind of almost feel in awe of the rest of your team for having achieved things alongside of you, which they're probably just doing normal things. You, because you encountered it, is elevated in its kind of legend.
Yeah, in all fairness, having said what I just said, it does also offer that sort of exclusivity of you got to solve that puzzle, you got your moment, and it then creates talking points afterwards, because other people are like, oh, what did you do? What happened here? And then the memory of the room lives on outside of it, whereas a shared point of view probably doesn't get spoken about afterwards because, well, they were there in the moment, so why discuss it unless it was something monumental that obviously holds a discussion afterwards.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And actually, what we try to do in our debriefs in our game is I like hosts to kind of follow like a 3-point kind of debrief, and they can elaborate as much as they want to in the territory. But the debrief is like something you did well, something that was fun that happened, and something that was different than we don't normally see. And it's often people kind of aren't so interested in what they did well. They are interested in things that we found fun, but they're very interested in stuff that they've approached in a different way. If you can center like a moment of drama around an innocuous action that a player has undertaken, even if it's just sort of silly behavior, like they interpret something wrong, if you bring it up in an amusing way in a debrief, that can create a memory for teams. Oh, do you remember when you completely failed to solve the puzzle because you thought it was a rope and actually it was a snake, or whatever the thing is?
Yeah, it's nice to have those moments in a game. I mean, we've said this many a time on the podcast. I think a games master or a games host can be the difference between a very good room and an okay room.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, and the fact that you've already set your staff up with the idea for their debrief is absolutely brilliant. And I don't think I've ever experienced that as a customer to an escape room.
I feel like the briefing at the start is such a big focus, but
Yeah.
the debrief at the end is always like okay, thanks, yep, I hope you had a great time, we need to get the next game in.
Yeah.
So it's nice to hear you take thought and effort on the actual debrief, because
Yeah.
I mean, the end is the lasting memory that they go away with.
Absolutely. It's all well and good going, oh, you guys are brilliant. I'm really glad you enjoyed your game. let's do a team photo. Let's do a funny one. Let's do a silly one. What do you guys have planned for this evening? Recommend restaurants and stuff, which was our debrief that you follow, and then send them on their way. I would not have even thought to go give them a 3-stage debrief. That's brilliant.
It's more than that as well, though. I think you've got to set it up in your briefing. You've got to get to know every player's name on your team. Because how can the experience be personal if the host doesn't know your name? It enables them to clue better during the game if they need to, but it also means they get to personalize the debrief afterwards. So do you remember when George did this or Jessica did that or whoever? And that makes them feel that someone's been paying attention to them. And then that makes them in turn realize that someone else is invested in them having a good time. And that's actually the thing you want when you walk into a building, whether it's in a restaurant or if it's an escape room, whatever it is. You want to know you're getting a nice welcome and someone wants you to have a good time. And that's just a really simple way that you can make that evident for them.
The customer journey is so unbelievably important in every aspect of any sort of experience for a customer. And I feel like a lot of escape rooms focus more on the game and the puzzles than they do the actual full experience for a customer. And I feel like, obviously, the puzzles in the room are a pretty quintessential part of an escape room, but things like getting them in, the briefing, making sure that they sort of feel heard and safe and are going to have a good time, making sure that they've got the right level of energy going into the room, making it personal. Like everything, even leading up to the room and after the experience, should be unique and catered to the person, and it should make it the best experience that they can possibly have, as opposed to just automated email beforehand, automated email after, generic briefing beforehand, generic debrief at the end. Like, it's laziness, in my opinion, and I feel like a lot of people can certainly do a lot better if they put the time and effort in, and the reviews will reflect that.
Yeah, I guess some businesses advertise positions working in an escape room as host, and others advertise them as games master. And I think they're two different things. And I think you should be doing both of them. You've got to set up your game so that it's entertaining. But if you were to read Escape Plan's reviews, I think you'd find about 75% of them mention the name of their host. And that's because people are looking for that human connection alongside the good experience. It's just a no-brainer to do it well, really.
Exactly. At the end of the day, your experience and your goal of your experience should be to create a lasting memory for a guest. It shouldn't be to outsmart the person that's trying to do this really hard escape room, or just for them to get through the room and you make money. If you can have somebody leave and genuinely say, like, this is going to be an experience I never forget, or have a moment that they can share with friends that they talk about for years after, that is so unbelievably powerful, and that's worth so much more than the money that an escape room costs.
Yeah.
I mean, from a financial business perspective, maybe not, but
like I did do a little quick stalk, and like your Google reviews, you're sitting at a 4.9. Do you know how unheard of that is?
yeah, especially with the amount of reviews as well.
Yeah.
Do you know that 2 1-star reviews on there are mistakes as well?
No way.
One is a bloke who's visited London and has reviewed all of London with some random photos of, like, I think, the BT Tower. And he's assigned that to a 1-star for Escape Plan. So it all sounds positive. He loved his time in London. He loved his pictures of the BT Tower, but that was a 1-star for Escape Plan as a result. There's another one, I think it's on Facebook, actually, that one, where someone reviewed us before we'd even launched.
Oh, wow. Oh, and it was just spam.
I don't know what it was. So, like, I mean, you can't control reviews, but those great reviews you see are because we have a phenomenal team at Escape Plan. They just really, they care. They want to be hosts. And yeah, I'm really proud of them. And even now and again, my name even pops up once in a blue moon. Like, it seems like there's a bit of life in the old dog for hosting still, but we've got so many hosts that are just rich in character, and they just got integrity as people as well, and they want to do it well. Just that has to be part of your recruitment drive. You have to make sure you're getting the people that align to the values and the culture of the business.
I mean, this might be a controversial question, and I know we're in the middle of the quickfire questions, but I'm just going to throw this in here anyway, because
we've abandoned quickfire a long time ago. We've abandoned.
Yeah, it's gone.
we're still going to make it through. We're still going to shoehorn these questions in somewhere. What are your opinions on utilizing students and part-time staff as employees?
Yeah, I'm for it. I think it's really important. I think when you work full-time at an escape room, I think you kind of get on a bit of a treadmill with your hosting, and I think you tire out And I think it's difficult to bring that same level of energy 5 days a week in a full-time job, unless you're personally invested in the business, like an owner of a small business. So I think what part-timers and students bring is fresh energy. And I think they're ready for their 2 days. And then, yes, they might lack some of the expertise that exists elsewhere in the team, but I'm quite pro it.
Good. There was no right answer to that question. I was just curious because I know 90% of escape rooms utilize students and part-time staff, which I think's very interesting in the grand scheme of businesses.
When you think about it, they are new to the city, they are looking for jobs, and also a lot of them are just so incredibly interesting. I've interviewed so many students, and I'm like, what are you doing at uni? And it's always like, of course, I collect weirdos, everyone knows that. But they're always doing incredible like degrees. Like somebody that used to work for us did a folklore degree and like a folklore and music degree, and I was like, this is incredible. And a lot of them are like anthropology, and they do really fun stuff, and they do bring the best personalities to the team. Like the team I have or had the team I had were absolutely brilliant, and I loved them, and they were all such personalities. They really cared about what they did. Yeah, it was like the golden age of my time there.
And you can tap into their creativity as well.
Absolutely.
We've got a writer in our team, so now we've got poetry in some of our escape rooms, which is really crafted. We've got artists who can paint well, and so now we've got good paintings in our escape rooms. So you can absolutely like harness the wider talent of people rather than just seeing them as a host, providing your business model can afford it, of course. We've got people in our team who are good at voiceovers, and so we've now got narrative introductions and kind of game clues that have been recorded. So yeah, I'm all for that kind of talent pool and diversity joining the team.
Speaking of locks,
pull it back to escape rooms. Yeah.
We weren't speaking about locks, but what would you say in an escape room environment is your favorite type of lock?
I don't have a favorite specific lock, but I'll describe what I like about locks that I like. They're clunky, they're heavy, that you can hear the mechanism. There's lots of clickety sounds. They depress nicely. They're tactile. It feels like something has shifted in almost like an Indiana Jones type way. A thing has opened and you hear like, stone grating on stone, or you hear metal, kind of creaking against metal. So some sort of sound that's attached to the lock. And I like it to be custom made. So something that someone's bothered to make themselves rather than just buying a shelf product.
So a big chunky lock. We're all here for big chunky locks.
Yeah.
Anything satisfying and tactile.
They are off the shelves, but it has to be said. Do you know the master locks that like they're featured everywhere, every escape room that's kind of got an older theme to it. They're also featured in like Harry Potter and things. Though I don't know what they're called. I'm gonna have to have a Google in a minute.
The big thick bad lads.
Are these the ones that you push the shackle inwards and it pops out again?
No, they are.
Or is it more ornate than that?
Yeah,
they're the ones that look like almost like a shield kind of shape.
Yes, that's them. So they are the Old English padlock by Master Lock, and you can age them really, really well. They are just like steel locks, and they just look pretty. And they've got really little ornate keys, and they are cheap as chips. But when I see one, I still get excited. I can mess with it.
I've just Googled it. I can see what you're talking about. The Squire do one of those as well. Yeah, they're nice. It feels like a proper lock, doesn't it?
It's a proper lock, yeah.
I'd like to see more chunky keys in escape rooms, like old-fashioned big keys.
Like huge.
I feel like every like prison kind of keys.
I know. I've got a post box, and I love the key that the post box has. It's huge. It has no need to be that big, but it's huge.
I feel like we carry keys on a daily basis for our house, for our cars. Like I want to see something different. I want to see something that looks like a magical key that could get you into an unknown world. I don't just want to see your standard little Simpsons special.
What's the minimum size key you want to see here, Corey? Are we talking about like a foot long?
Oh, I feel like a foot might be too big. It's a very big key.
You'd never lose them though, would you?
Yeah, imagine if your car started with one of those.
It would like weigh your pocket down as you walk about.
I think half a foot is probably like a good size for a key.
And for New English, that's 15 centimeters. So we've talked about your favorite themes, your favorite locks. Let's get a bit negative, Nancy. It's my time. What is your least favorite kind of puzzle?
Yeah, again, hard to categorize, but I think what I don't enjoy is where the solve moment is short and the resolving process is long. So you've worked out that, aha, that's how I do it. And then they're involved in some sort of repetition of process. That means you're operating some sort of movement or machinery and you're going back to the same thing several times. So you know how to solve it, you know how to get there, but you're involved in a process that isn't very interesting between.
This is one of the most common answers I find with Geth for this question, is where you know exactly what you have to do and you just know that you're going to spend the next 10 minutes trying to get to said scenario.
Yeah, it is okay if the thing that you're holding is satisfying, but it's not okay if it's referencing, for example, or if it's just a lateral movement of one thing, or a counting of something, or a point on a rope. Or
Very long sequence of Morse code.
yeah,
I love Morse code. I love any sort of coding puzzles, but if it's a full paragraph that needs decoded, too
you're out.
much in my opinion. I feel like there's a fine line between long enough to be difficult, but not too long that it's tedious.
People don't really want difficult.
It's one of those things. Quite a few escape rooms, especially more so now than in the past, have started to turn towards low escape rates and trying to be notoriously difficult, which I find incredibly confusing, because surely the customer experience then is not one of enjoyment. Surely it's one of sheer frustration and why have I just paid this amount of money for 60 minutes of absolute agony?
Yeah, exactly right. It's sort of an unspoken thing, really. I think the customer's paid. You kind of want to make them win, even by hook or by crook. Whether that means a little bit of extra time, whether that means a little bit more hinting. Like, we kind of want to be able to see the whole challenge and feel like it was a fair challenge, even if we weren't quite up to it that day.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Okay, so you've run a lot of escape rooms, you've designed a lot of escape rooms, you've built them. What are your strengths in an escape room?
Sequences, I think. Working out the thing that comes next or the thing that was in the middle that's missing. Kind of like verbal reasoning non-verbal reasoning in those school tests when you see that kind of a puzzle.
I wish I was like that. I'm terrible at finding the next link. Grateful that the rest of the people I play escape rooms are really good at that. I'm just like, I can't see this. Time puzzles really get me. And where the time changes between each thing, I can't find the pattern in it.
My brain stops working. I mean, again, it comes down to maths, man. It comes down to maths. Always.
Get maths out of your escape rooms.
Yeah. My goodness. Speaking of which, I mean, maths is my weakness. Would you say you have any particularly standout weaknesses within an escape room environment?
Yeah, I've got two quite big weaknesses, really. The first one is connected to audio. So I can find intense audio in an escape room distracting. And particularly if there has to be listening to an event that's going on at the same time as a hint, I feel agitated at this point. It came to a head once. I was playing a game where there was a headset I had to wear, and there was a delay in the headset, and a little bit like a Zoom call that it just sort of stutters through it. And I couldn't focus on either the puzzle or the hint that was being supplied. And I decided to take the headset off because it was too much. And then I got told off for taking the headset off because it was their only way of cluing me. Audio is definitely. I'm also terrible at audio puzzles. So anything you have to listen to, like a sequence of events, or you have to replicate some sort of rhythm or melody. Yeah, there's a famous one involving a heartbeat in London, which I was dreadful at.
I do not know what this famous puzzle is, but it sounds incredibly intriguing.
No. Do you want to shout them out?
Oh, so
Without any spoilers.
It's part of one of London's most respected games, Clue Quest Origins, and it's just a puzzle that I struggled with. The experience in the set was great, and I loved everything apart from this damn puzzle.
Just the rhythm. Oh, that maybe shouldn't have been a shout out, should it?
No, go and play it because it is a great game. And actually, Clue Quest are really, really good, honest business, and they're trying to set you up for entertainment. I feel like they're a good trading company. We happily refer our customers that way. The other weakness I just thought of actually is anagrams. I'm actually
Ooh.
really, really good at anagrams if I have a pencil. And
Something to
if
jot
I
down.
have,
Yeah.
I am just the worst. I can't solve a 6-letter anagram, as was recently evidenced. And the way I solved it was to, instead of looking at the letters, there were some corresponding numbers underneath, which definitely were going to have a sum attached to it. So you line up the 6 letters, and beneath it, you're going to have like 5 numbers and a plus or a minus sign, I think it was. And I deducted that the puzzle maker would have probably made a fairly easy sum. So I began to order the books. So I ordered the books in a way that I thought they would probably make a sum, and then deduced the 6-letter word at the top of the result, rather than solving the anagram. So I reverse
No
engineered.
way.
Well done.
I mean,
Fair
again,
play. You went the
yeah.
most roundabout way to get there, but you managed to get there in a very creative and probably significantly harder way.
Yeah, it's leaning on that strength of sequences rather than the anagrams, which as soon as I've got to picture something, I need a pencil.
I feel like a pencil or an electronic pad or anything like that in an escape room, just to take notes or do equations or to get something visual in front of you, is super, super useful. And there's so many rooms that don't offer any sort of writing materials. I'm probably going to sound like an absolute
what?
psychopath saying this, but occasionally I'll like etch into my arm with my nail notes.
I'm sorry.
Again, I said I'd sound borderline psychotic.
Escape
And
room with self-harm.
not to that extent, but like just enough to be able to see it. Well,
But you know
this is
why they're absent, don't you? Our pens and pencils. You know why they're absent.
yeah, it makes it harder.
I'd just use my notes app.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I also don't agree with taking your phone out in an escape room,
I know there is a bit to be said about that.
especially
but
for use of torches or anything like that. I disagree. If the room needed a torch, you would have been supplied one. If you needed to take notes, you should have, in theory, been supplied one, but not always.
Yeah, I mean the main issue there is graffiti, isn't it? It's like people like to decorate the room if they give it a pen.
we
Very
had
true.
issues with graffiti because we had whiteboards for ages, and somebody did a UV puzzle, which was nice of them, and wrote over it in whiteboard pen, and then that was the end of the whiteboard pens.
I feel like those little electronic boards that you can just click a button to
Yeah.
erase, they're perfect. Or
They're like
alternatively, you know
Rainbow
those
scribble boards.
water-based things that you get as for like toddlers so that they can't
Ooh.
spill it anywhere? Maybe start putting those into puzzles.
I'm in favour of puzzles where you get to have like a reference board that's full of like magnets, and you can drag magnets and stuff around to organise your thinking in a different space. This happens in a couple of our games, but I've also seen it in The Game Is Now Sherlock, where you've got, I think it was The Game Is Now, could be wrong, but you've got to locate 10 cities or something, and you have an option to bank your thinking in a kind of a real-time way, but it's adjustable. So you can, haven't got to take notes because there's like a note-taking device that isn't connected to pens and pencils.
Please tell me it's pins in a board with string.
I mean, that is definitely what we need, and I think I have seen that in like a detective game once. Actually, there's a fun game in I think it's in Gillingham. I'm not sure it's still open. It's at Mythologic CSI, and the game is a good game. But the bit I liked about it is when you walk into this crime scene, you begin just speculating like you're Poirot. Like, well, clearly I can see what's happened here. And you gather people around and you submit your theory to them as part of the game. It's actually not part of the game. It's something that we brought to the game ourselves, but the game enabled us to have that moment of like, let's all pretend we're detectives and what do we think's happened? And there's a real sense of play that came alongside that.
I feel like, especially in a detective game, it's such a fundamental part. When people think detectives, they think lots of pictures on a board. They think the red wire connecting them. So it sounds like I need to get down there and play that game, is what it sounds like. If it's still there. This is one of the biggest issues with escape rooms is people are constantly changing and evolving their games. And I fully understand that that is a thing that needs to happen. But then guests come on this podcast and tell us about these wonderful escape rooms that they did that don't exist anymore. And it just makes us incredibly jealous, and yeah, the fear of missing out is real.
Yeah, that's a fair shout. I think you have a 3 strike system on your podcast. If I've mentioned 3 games that are out of play now, that's it. I'm stricken off.
I'm pretty sure you're on 2, so we're
Yeah,
we're
no,
close.
I'm one.
Dangerously close. If you were to create a dream team, this is obviously consisting of yourself and 4 other people. These can be celebrities, they can be deceased and obviously reincarnated, they could be alive, they could be people that you know. Who would be on your dream team?
Well, I like that you had to specify that the deceased could be reincarnated rather than you just bringing a corpse along to the escape room.
We've had to specify this in the past. As much as like the corpse of Freddie Mercury would be not particularly helpful, but I mean Freddie Mercury as a person would be incredibly like interesting to talk to. Less so deceased. I also feel like there might be some laws against that.
Yeah, there's more than one law that's going to prevent that. So, well, okay, let me just cross off Freddie Mercury's bones. Hang on.
I don't think there's any laws on reanimating bodies, as far as I'm aware. I don't know if there's a law on necromancy.
I've got 4 personalities in mind. 2 of them are living. Third one is potentially living, depending on your viewpoint, and the 4th one is dead. None of them are going to help me with the puzzles. Okay, they're all there for completely different reasons. I'm going to take on the role of doing the puzzles, and I'm going to have supporting me in my quest for different kind of like forms of affirmation or encouragement. So the first one I'm going to have is Jurgen Klopp, ex-football manager of Liverpool FC. Not particularly a Liverpool fan, but I am a fan of Jurgen Klopp because he does this kind of fist pump at the end of football games, which is it just really gets me pumped. So I want him in the room just to fist pump every time I get something right, just to bring a bit of energy.
It's pretty intense as well. It's a whole body fist pump.
Yeah,
When I think of that man, all I think about is teeth. He's got such massive teeth, and it makes me so happy when I think about him.
So if you're looking for a writing utensil in an escape room, you've got plenty of surface area to use there.
I actually feel bad saying bad things about Jurgen Klopp because I think he's genuinely one of the nicest people on the planet. So
Phenomenal guy.
No.
Yeah, but
If you're listening, Jurgen, I apologize.
the range on that fist pump is significant. It starts low down low and it comes up to
It's slowly shifting the earth a few inches on the daily.
Right, the second one is somebody that you won't know. It's just a friend of mine, Mark. He's a photographer and he is just quite a positive guy. And he has a lot of really silly ideas that he will play out the dialogue of that idea in real time as the idea manifests. So he'll say, "Hey, Brendan, wouldn't it be interesting if this thing happened?" And then he'll have the other part of the conversation as if that moment has started already. And then he'll develop that conversation even further. And soon, before you know it, you're in this new scenario not connected to the escape room.
That he's just created in his mind.
Yeah, it's great. I'm there for it.
Creating an escape room in his own little mind palace.
Yeah, exactly. We played an escape room together actually in Colmar in France. And this isn't really about him. This is more about the escape room. The owner there was absolute genius. He's made a game called Into the Light. And by the way, to my knowledge, this is still open. So if it's closed down, not my fault. I'll visit.
That might be a third strike.
It might be a third strike. Don't Google it just in case. The owner has clearly inherited a building site, and he's decided, great, we'll have an escape room themed on a building site. So you walk into the escape room, and it's a derelict building, just as the owner would have inherited it. And he has placed around the building at different levels a variety of kind of like builders' tools, like kind of like thermoscopes and measuring devices. And you walk around the building site. He spent nothing on the set, almost nothing on the props, and still getting away with charging 30 euros. And it's a pretty decent game.
That's sensational. I spoke about when we spoke to somebody about their dream escape room, I said, wouldn't it be incredible if somebody just made an escape room where they picked all of the tasks that they needed to do in a day and made those the challenges for the escape room? And if this guy's getting somebody, like a team of people, to construct his building for him via an escape room, that's sensational. That right there is ingenuity at its finest.
The holy grail again of that would be to incorporate an entire reset within the puzzles.
Oh
so
my goodness, imagine.
You deconstruct and reconstruct the escape room yourself in some sort of looped event. Brilliant. Right, third character is God. I'm bringing God into my escape room.
Are we talking the God, or are we talking the Morgan Freeman adaptation?
Oh, are we talking like Zeus? What are we talking?
We need more specifics.
Yeah, well, who says that those things are any different?
True.
Are they not all one being? I don't think it's actually too important what version of God that I bring, as long as I have some extra firepower and I need to override physics with some kind of miracle. So we can just change the physics of the room in order to solve it.
I mean, you do realize like Dynamo or Darren Brown are also available, and you don't have to quite go for the Lord Almighty to bypass.
Is it true? But I want I like the idea of a host having to brief God on how to perform the game.
Imagine. I can't wait to put in brackets on the social media post next to God. I'm just gonna put, yep, he genuinely said that. And who would be your fourth person? How do you follow God?
Yeah,
Like, how
who are you
how
adding
is there a
now?
follow up here?
So I think, yeah, I've thought about this, and it's a dead guy. It's a philosopher, maybe Aristotle. I haven't really chosen the philosopher. Let's go with Aristotle.
Okay.
But it's not. I don't just bring him along. He is warped in suddenly, kind of quantum leap style, about 2 minutes into the game. So he's like a renowned philosopher who deeply understands beings and life, but has no context for why he's in an escape room with three other people, the manager of Liverpool Football Club from 2020, Mark the photographer, God, and myself. I think that's gonna throw him off his guard a bit.
I think that combination's enough to send everyone in a mental spiral.
And then we'd ask him to contribute by asking questions about the meaning of puzzles rather than how to solve them.
Oh, goodness.
Their kind of philosophical meaning. And then he would only be able to answer in Greek, which, with the exception of God, none of us would understand. So we'd end up ignoring him, become the surplus character who just like wanders around, confused around the escape room.
But would God not then have the power to be able to make him speak in a language that you all understand?
Yeah.
Yeah, but God
Could
would
be a shared
inherently
language.
actually want the translation. He would
Oh.
know that we were not looking for it. We were looking for it to have a confused Aristotle.
Oh, that's.
You would just
I
understand.
feel like that's
that assignment.
incredibly mean to poor Aristotle, wandering around this unknown place that he's just been dropped into, wondering why everyone's trying to get out.
But I think it's his comeuppance though, because I mean Aristotle himself has that like dilemma, doesn't he, with the flute? What do you do with the flute? If you heard this, it's I can't remember it very well, but it's something like, do you give it to the person that made it, to the person that can play it, or the person who would never be able to afford it? And he uses it as kind of a question around the case for charity, the case for utility, and the case for merit. And it's quite interesting to cut that question out into like an evening at the pub and just see what people come up with and see what their bend on these things is, and then watch them U-turn as they think about their answer.
We have very different pub conversations, but I feel like mine need to be way more philosophical. It sounds way more fun than that show. Weather was good last night, wasn't it? You watched the footy on Friday. Jurgen Klopp punched the stadium through the sky. Oh, goodness. Wow, that is by far the most diverse and confusing dream team we've ever had on the podcast.
Yeah, I love that God came in. That's very sweet of you. Was not expecting that.
Is this as a believer or non-believer, just out of curiosity? Or open-mindedness?
Good question. I think I float between believing and not. I think sometimes I think yeah, and other times I think that's ridiculous. And I don't think there are many fully doubting but vaguely Christian background people like me. So I'm always interested in like the questions and trying to find out what truth looks like. But I've got so many questions, it's really hard to package it and say for sure it's yes or no.
That's fair. I would say I'm also in the same boat. I certainly would like to believe that there's something bigger than us, because the world is scary otherwise, just thinking that you exist and then you die. But at the same time, whether I believe one being overarched this entire thing, I'm not sure. I don't know. Yeah, I'm uncertain, but I'm very open to the concept of God as a whole, I guess.
Really philosophical then.
Yeah, it's got real philosophical real quick.
Have you ever seen the X-Files?
I've seen various episodes, but not like the full thing.
Fox Mulder's got a poster in his office of a UFO, and it says on the poster, "I want to believe." His life is this quest to find out if UFOs are real. And it's kind of how I feel about faith, about God. It's like, I want to believe, but I don't necessarily have that kind of an evidence. I think that's the kind of the quandary bit, isn't it? Like faith isn't supposed to be based on evidence. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of the Fox Mulder of the Christian world.
But I feel like, again, that plays into what God is. God is
Yeah.
this unknowing and all-knowing thing that you can't describe or can't fully understand. So in the sense, that is also correct.
Yeah.
Wow, this got... I feel like I should be
I feel
high as a
like we
kite right now,
Yeah.
or in church, either or.
But your listeners are all going to be very frustrated about our low-level kind of religious debate here.
Yeah, no. So, obviously, we've spoken a lot about what you're like in an escape room. We started briefly to speak at the start about your games, but what is your escape room origin story? Why specifically escape rooms, and how did you get into them?
So I need to credit a couple of people here. The first one is Mrs. Mills. She's the entrepreneur in the family. She's the risk taker. She's the one who wants to start a new business. And she managed to drum enough into me that when I was working in a quite successful market research career, that actually doesn't have to be this way all the time. And I kind of got to the point where I didn't want to regret never trying something new. I think my family default is like stay in the same career and job for 20 years. In not a necessarily very creative profession. And I thought if I don't make a change soon, I'll never make a change. It was in my late 30s at the time, maybe 36, 37. And she kept coming up with these different business ideas, and I kept shooting them down because I tend to be risk averse and see the obstacles. But when I see a good idea, I tend to sort of follow it through and finish it. So she's a starter and I'm a finisher, which theoretically makes us a good team, particularly if we agree on something. Anyway, we went along to Clue Quest on a work night out. Kerry wasn't even there, actually, with a couple of colleagues. And we had a 59-minute escape on Plan 52. And I just fell in love with the format. I love cooperative games. I love semi-cooperative games as well, but I love cooperative games. I don't like this feeling of competition. I don't mind a competitive game, but I don't like the bit at the end where you're the winner and then you have to feel awkward that you've won and no one else has. And this cooperative format makes you feel great at the end, especially if it's like we just got through the challenge really close, 1 minute to go. So I was inspired, I think, by London's biggest operator, Clue Quest.
Shout out again to Clue Quest.
Yeah.
I really need to get down to London to play more games in the south. Like, I've almost exhausted the northeast of all of our games, and I'd need to venture further south. It just seems so far away. It's really not in the grand scheme of things, especially when we talk to guests from, the States or Russia or places like that. I just think, wow, we're tiny in comparison. What am I complaining about a 6-hour journey when you can drive 6 hours and still be in the same state? But
I
yeah,
feel like we just need to spend a
London's-
weekend and just smash like 10 out in a weekend.
Yeah.
Having your rooms nominated among the best rooms in the world by Terpecker, what, in your opinion, makes a world-class escape room?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, that. I kind of wish I was qualified to answer it better, because I've only actually played a handful of Terpecker rooms. And I'm aware that outside of the British Isles, there are reports of much more impressive and experiences, braver sets. So I think it's quite person specific, but in my opinion, I see that Terpecker focuses a lot on high production sets and daring ideas. And I guess experiences that are committed to like monitoring and revising the user experience a lot. That's quite, I guess that's quite vague. But for me, I want to see more rooms that allow you to be. This isn't answering your question, actually. This is answering a different question. This question is like, what do you want to see more of?
I mean, in all fairness, that also answers the question of what do you think makes a world-class escape room?
Yeah. Okay. So I think I want to see escape rooms that allow you to be more playful and almost bring your own ideas a bit. That kind of risks crossing a little bit into immersive theatre. But whenever I've played games, I'm always the kind of player who wants to test the boundaries of where we are. So, like, just to make sure, like knowing how to break the game if I could. I guess, particularly within video games, things like, Grand Theft Auto is morally reprehensible, but as a game, what it did was it opened up choice to a player. It's like the boundaries are gone. You can drive where you like. You don't have to drive around the track anymore. You can drive around, and that was quite kind of game changing for me in the video game world. And again, in things like open world games like Legend of Zelda's Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, there's a lot of like, you can go here and do this first or that first. And I want to see that more of that choice available in escape rooms. But I think if you really want to answer your question about Turpica well, you'd probably go and read a blog like Room Escape Artist because they have great thought leadership on, worldwide kind of experiences.
Shout out to our previous guest, David Spira. Go check out that episode.
Recently, have you? What a great guy he is. I love it.
Seamless introduction there. He's such a nice guy and
yeah, he
absolute
really is.
genius. I felt like the entire time we were talking, I was sat taking notes, and it was like a masterclass on escape rooms in general, like how to be as a guest and how to be as an operator, and everything was just a massive knowledge dump. It was scary.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think he's also just gifted in thinking about it and articulating those thoughts clearly in a way that looks like he's been pondering it for a century, but he's probably just been considering it for a couple of hours because he's really bright.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can meticulously plan these episodes as much as I want, and I will never sound anywhere near as astute and clever as that gentleman does in the spur of the moment.
Yeah, and you can't hold against him because he's really nice.
Yeah, nicest man on the planet. It's not okay. How dare you, David? How dare you have all of these wonderful attributes?
And then also, the continual complaint would be, we'll share the knowledge, but then he is. So
yeah,
we can't have no cause to complain.
You can't even be like, know it all, because he genuinely does know quite a lot. And yeah, that's also frustrating. But it comes with experience, and he's a very experienced guy in that field. So that's why we can entrust his knowledge, and we'll allow it. Going back to what you mentioned before about venturing more towards immersive theatre, I feel like the only way now for escape rooms to evolve is for the sort of fusion of those two genres together. As much as I feel like there can be plenty more ideas, there can be crazier puzzles, there can be crazier set design, I do think the introduction of characters and actual story development as you're proceeding through the story and things changing and you making choices, I think that could be fundamentally what changes the escape room world. Just look at the likes of Phantom Peak in London. Absolutely phenomenal. You go in, you're in this massive immersive space, you're in this village or city, and there's actors, you go solve quests, you do puzzles, you can experience as much or as little as you want, and you can have experiences that nobody else is going to have because it's so individual and personal to you. And I think if we can somehow manage to take that and put it into an escape room format or blend the two meticulously, then it will be absolutely incredible. Be absolute game changer.
Yeah, I think that it will naturally head that way to different degrees of success depending on the experience and the talent within the escape room operating companies, and also adjacent kind of businesses who work in the immersive world and make them more like an escape room. So I think that will inevitably happen. I don't think it's the only way for escape rooms to grow, though. I think escape rooms can tap into other, maybe more physical kind of activities, like rock climbing, which is in itself kind of like a puzzle solving / physical strength endeavor. It would be very easy to kind of create games of a physical challenge that elevate an escape room past just being in a room.
I agree. I was very narrow-minded when I said only. I didn't mean only, but I think it's one of the few ways that can certainly branch off.
I would like to merge all of my hobbies in one. Yes, please. Climbing and escape rooms.
There's some phenomenal escape rooms out there that I've heard of where you have to like scale cliff edges in open quotations, and then you get to the top and you jump down into a pool of water and you swim under a cave into the next room, like all sorts of crazy stuff like that. I think it's in China. I heard about that one, which is absurd. But yeah, I agree. I feel like the more you can make it an adventure or like an immersive experience in that sense with puzzles and escape room elements, I think that'll be... It's like dropping somebody into a movie set or a video game, like you mentioned just before. It's something that you can't beat.
Yeah, I think currently the focus for most companies is probably a little bit more on making them feel like they are somewhere, and the production of the set being kind of sort of a little bit of a dilemma between, does this look nice or play nice? And we don't have enough that's bridging that gap. So I would say that there are a lot of great experiences that look nice that just don't play as good as they look. And that's the reports I've heard of other experiences like Saw London. Looked great, felt great, but actually as a puzzle experience didn't really hold together for some people. Not a personal judgment because I haven't played it. And then there was like a Tomb Raider experience in London, which was great because you get to go kind of sliding, down ropes and enjoying the adventure element of it. but actually the puzzle element was quite light.
It definitely depends on what you're advertising said experience as. If you're advertising it as an escape room, then that's where you start drawing lines. If you advertise it as an immersive experience or like an adventure experience, then it's more open-ended as to what you can do. But I agree. I feel like often the term escape room is used in a setting where it's not necessarily an escape game.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be an escape game. I think a Phantom Peak is not an escape room.
No, it has escape room elements, but it's not an escape room at heart. But that's what makes it so good.
Yeah, it scratches a completely different itch for me. I really, really enjoyed Phantom Peak, but not for the reasons I thought. I thought I was going to enjoy the quest part of it, the kind of the trekking around and kind of the interacting with the different puzzles. But I actually enjoyed the world more. It was, I suppose it's slightly lighter on difficulty. Maybe my particular interest is a little bit more chunky in terms of, puzzle content. But I thought I'd actually, one of my hesitations with immersive theatre as a guest is sometimes I can't bring the same energy that the host is bringing or the actor is bringing. And it makes me feel a bit isolated or awkward or not contributing. What Phantom Peak does really, really well, it provides a structure and a framework for conversation. So if you want to opt out of that moment where it's a bit awkward, you can focus on the puzzle part of your quest. But if you want to then engage in the world and the person and what's their backstory, you get to see that too. It's really clever. It's a really clever design because of that.
The people at Phantom Peak are working some absolute miracles in that sense. And I definitely think that is almost, I'm not going to say entirely in part for the incredible staff that they have employed to play the characters and to understand every individual's sort of needs and experience. Obviously, that's coming from a management perspective as well, because they're obviously supplying absolutely incredible training for these people to be able to understand and interact and act based on what they're seeing in front of them. And I think both on Phantom Peak's part and the incredible actors that they have, it's just an absolutely phenomenal job that they need to be praised for. Being one of the longest standing escape rooms in the UK, you guys have been around since almost the emergence of escape rooms in the British scene. No doubt your games and company have gone through a lot of changes. Obviously, you're coming up to almost 10 years. You said in 2025 will be your 10-year celebration. Do you have any favourite memories that spring to mind that you'd like to share and reminisce about the previous 10 years of your experience?
Yeah, so I don't know where to start with that one, really. I think I'm going to jump back to Carlos for a minute there, who was my second ever employee. He was from Barcelona. He came and he didn't have a very good grasp of English. It was all right, but it was quite a thick accent, and I was a bit worried about it. And he worked in an escape room called Chicken Banana in Barcelona. Don't know if they're still operating or not. Probably are. Give them my fourth strike.
Very creative name that definitely alludes to it being an escape room company.
Yeah, he revealed to me that his job was in one of the games. Am I going to give a spoiler on a game? I don't know if I've never played it.
Should we do a quick Google as to whether it still exists? Chicken Banana Escape Room. I can't believe I'm searching for this. Chicken Banana, Barcelona, Spain. It is permanently closed, unfortunately. I mean, fortunately for your story, but unfortunately for...
Does this terminate the podcast right here?
We're calling it there, guys.
You said the one thing you're not allowed to say.
Okay, so that does mean you can give spoilers.
I think it was like a dentist themed room or something, like some sort of like vaguely thriller based game where you I don't know the plot, but let's assume there was an evil dentist at large and you're in his offices or in his surgery. And around about the 3/4 point in the game, when you're expecting the dentist to appear, Carlos enters the room dressed as a chicken and does an outrageous dance to try and make you laugh. And there's no context for this. It's not built into the story or the theme. I think they just decided they were going to be playful with their games. And you know what? Well, I've just said chickens and bananas and stuff like that.
No way. That's
so
so unnecessarily balmy, but also incredible.
Well, this is Carlos's context. So that's the world he's come, and he was very, very entertaining. On his first week, he came in and said, I had a bit of a difficult situation at McDonald's. And I said, "Oh, what happened?" Well, I was ordering the ice cream, the McFlurry, and he wanted the sprinkles mixed in to the to the ice cream, but he didn't know the English word for it, the Spanish word for it. sounds a lot like an English word to remove. So he's there in McDonald's asking them, having ordered this McFlurry and received it, to remove the ice cream from it. So he passes it back to the attendant at McDonald's, said, "Can you just remove the ice cream?" So she's looking at this thought, well, it is ice cream. It's like, I guess I can keep just the sprinkles, but they were going to attach now. So this is what the language level that he had and was fluing teams with for the first 3 months, which was with mixed results. One day he came in and announced that he was having a bath the previous night and enjoying kind of like candles around the bath. And suddenly he could smell what smelled like chicken, which he didn't expect in his bath. And this may be linked with chicken banana days, I've no idea. He then realized his hair has caught fire from one of the candles, and that's what's producing a chicken-like smell.
No way.
So he was a very entertaining character. But my favorite story of him is one night I got saying, "I'm sorry, Brendan, I can't reset the room." Why not, Carlos? Well, the call cut out, and I was given no more information because I think his phone died or something, until I arrived next morning at the escape room. And we have like one of these desks with a perspex surface that you can write on in Sharpie. And he'd drawn a picture of the escape room, like a kind of a floor plan of it, and it included the trousers from the prisoner of war camp barracks that were in it. And he'd drawn a circle next to the trousers, on top of the trousers, and an arrow pointing at a circle, and a diagram of a really large spider. And he said he was too terrified to go in the room because there was a spider in the trousers. So I've got the photographs on my phone somewhere. So it's always been entertaining having different staff members, and they're the ones I think that have made the last 10 years interesting for the different kind of stories they bring along.
Can I just say I fully support Carlos's decision to just vacate the premises and leave the spider be. In all fairness, there's been a few times when I've found spiders in my house and I've just gone, I'm going out for the day. Like, you can pay rent now, buddy. This is your place. Like, it's not okay.
I once had a very large spider at my bedsitter when I was a teenager, and I was terrified of it. I'm actually not particularly bothered about spiders now, but at that age I was. And the only defense I had was shaving gel. So I decided to coat the entire spider with like Gillette shaving gel, which was fine until the shaving gel started moving of its own volition.
Oh no! You just made this bigger, stickier mammoth of a spider.
How is it carrying that weight? It's extremely heavy for it. I couldn't work it out.
Oh, wow.
Oh goodness!
I used to be so scared of them. And then I was at a party and somebody put a tarantula on my leg. And I was like, oh, I guess you're fluffy. And then that was the end of my arachnophobia.
I feel like I need to try and resolve my issue. There was a spider at work today that I had to get rid of, and because I am ever the professional, I looked incredibly calm and collected whilst I was screaming on the inside, taking this spider in a cup outside to get rid of it.
Well, nice to know that you saved it. You didn't kill it.
Yeah, I can't do meaninglessly killing things for the sake of it.
I mean,
Unless it's in a really tight spot, I can't get it, and there's a
You
high
can
chance
kill
of
it.
it getting on me. In which case, sorry kid, you gotta go. It's me or you, and in this case, it's you. Or the
so
building.
different.
I am willing to torch a building to get rid of a spider.
If it's like in my house, like I used to have a spider that
You're on
lived
my
in,
turf now,
Yeah.
boy.
I used to have one that lived in my living room, and every night it would just scuttle its way across in front of my TV, and I'd be like, "Hi, little spider," and then my dog ate it when we got my dog, so
Oh.
that was the end of it. But I've still got a little spider in my wing mirror that
I
just
have a
lives its
spider in
best
my
life.
wing mirror too.
Oh, they're really lucky.
I absolutely destroy his webs every time I go on the motorway and feel so bad, and then come back the
I
next day and
know.
he's created an absolute masterpiece again. It's like a little spider Picasso in my wing mirror.
Every now and again, you get like a little leg.
Yeah, just like a gentle wave
Yeah.
and a reminder that it's still terrifying, no matter how cute that little feather is.
Oh, it's made a home. I smashed one of my wing mirrors a few weeks ago, and I had to replace the glass in it, and it was the one that my spider was living in. And I was like, I really hope that there's not a nest behind this glass that I'm about to pull out.
Yeah, but
and
just think the spider's like, whoo, housing renovation.
yeah, I know, and a new wall, and it's heated. But it's still living its best life.
We are ever getting distracted,
Oh,
and I'm going to try and somehow shoehorn this back to where we
Where
were.
were we?
So Carlos joined when the business was quite young, and I had been working solidly kind of like 6 days a week and long days. And finally, we had some sort of family event on a Saturday I couldn't really get out of legitimately. So it's my first day off in about like 6 months of trading. And I said to Carlos, look, whatever happens today, just deal with it because I'm not going to be available at all. And that was the day that the escape room gods had decided they were going to test Carlos. The first thing that happened in the morning was that 2 teams arrived at the same time for the same slot. So that was his opening gambit for the day. That had never happened. There was some sort of error with our primitive booking system at the time. So the first thing he has to do is run 2 games back to back whilst paying for one of the teams to head downstairs and get a coffee in the local cafe. And then the third game that came, the game started to become a bit undone. Some of the kind of the frailties were beginning to sort of like manifest themselves. And so he's having a bit of a stressful day. But it all came to a head when there was an older couple. We attract actually quite a lot of grey-haired audience because of our World War II thing. And we had a couple...
Reminisce about their childhood. That notoriously happy time period.
Yeah, it's actually often people who are very young during the war, but have an interest in it still because they're attached to it rather than actually lived through it. Or their granddad or their dad was like a pilot or something. So this couple's in the room and they're probably in their 70s, I think. And this is quite early doors. This is 2015. And when you're thinking it's all these like, millennials who are like, doing this hip new thing, but no, these 2 old folks have rocked up. And Carlos, some of his briefing, maybe have skipped over the physical force part of it because you don't expect 2 older people to go hard at your room. You know where this story's heading, don't you? At the end of Battle for Britain, it can't have been 2015. It must have been 2017 because it was Battle for Britain. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's a bank of 6 switches. This is not a spoiler because you told us in the briefing. There's a bank of 6 switches that trigger the end of Battle for Britain, and you have to basically flick them to launch a counter attack against the enemy. And instead of doing what other people did, this lady decided, well, instead of flicking the switches down, I'm going to investigate what's behind them. And we've got screws in here which are around about, there must have been like an 8mm thread and around about 50mm length. So they're hefty screws. They're hefty screws. They've secured the bank of switches, but we've had to leave a side behind the plank of wood that holds them just so that we can access the wiring if we need to. And she's got her fingers in this gap and with some kind of hideous strength has ripped away this entire bank of switches. Disabling the game for the rest of the day. And Carlos bursts into the room to try and assess what's going on and startles the older man. He steps backwards, trips on a box that is fixed to the floor, which was just in front of a window, and his back and elbow smashed the window. He's doubled down on the difficulty of the situation. Most destructive elderly couple you've ever known. He found more devastation after they left as well. Like various props had been really heavily handled.
Oh my goodness.
And this is the day I said to him, you cannot contact me about anything. I have a family thing, you cannot contact me.
This sounds absurd. This sounds like an episode of Only Fools and Horses or One Foot in the Grave or something like that. This just,
Exactly.
if I was in that situation, I'd be like, all right, where's the camera crew? Come out, joke's over, haha, funny. Who's paying for the repairs?
Do you know when people say every pot's got their lid? I think that couple were just made for each other.
The most destructive power couple ever. I'm just really pleased that the old man didn't go out of the window.
Yeah.
On a positive note.
Yeah.
I mean, Carlos, maybe less pleased, but...
That window wasn't fixed until about a year later, not the whole year, but within the next year.
It's atmospheric.
Well, this is it. It's kind of like 1940s Blitz room, so you can do what you like. You can have stuff, and it was actually it was fixed as a result of them filming in the yard. They I don't know if you've come across a World War II film called Allied. It's got Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard in it. It's a film about spies, and if you watch that, you'll be able to see the old escape plan building just momentarily in the corner, and that's where they fixed it in preparation for that film.
Wait, did the film company pay to get your window fixed so that it would look good in their shot?
Yeah, not just that. They also paid for us to close down for a couple of days.
Love that.
Brilliant.
Instead of doing that, we all hid on the first floor trying to get a sight of Brad Pitt out the window, which was I didn't go fangirl so hard, but just
selling tickets to members of the public like you want an opportunity to potentially see Brad Pitt from our window.
We've had a few celebrities through Escape Plan, actually. We've had Paley Atwell, who's Agent Carter, and we've had James Norton, the British actor, who's in Grantchester and McMafia, that sort of stuff. And we featured very early on a Mary Portash show as well, which was a very weird experience.
Have you had any celebrities that you've locked in that haven't managed to escape?
Both James Norton and Hayley Atwell were pretty sharp people. They were very, very good. We also recently hosted Humphrey Kerr from Welcome to Wrexham. I don't know if you've come across that series.
No.
But again, he was really sharp. So I think when a celebrity comes along to play an escape room, they're usually pretty good.
That's fair. When we spoke to the wonderful ladies from Dreadlock Escapes down in Cornwall, they had Sean Wallace from The Chase play one of their rooms, and he got stuck, which was very, very satisfying to hear.
And great for marketing as well.
Oh yeah, wonderful for marketing.
We
beat the chaser. We've obviously touched a lot upon escape rooms and immersive and all of those wonderful things. One thing that we haven't yet touched on is board games. Obviously, growing up with things like Scotland Yard and Werewolf, you later decided to venture into the board game world. Can you talk us through both of your games and why you decided to venture into this category?
Yeah, I can. I mean, the short answer is there was a pandemic and we needed another revenue. So COVID closed the business and we had to develop some other ideas. But I actually had a couple of ideas kind of cooking up. Stop the Train is a social deduction game which has a mechanic not wildly dissimilar to Secret Hitler. So it's sort of Secret Hitler on rails, but it's a bit more involved than just binary argument. There was sort of evidence-based argument in there. It's thematically a 1940s train armed with a bomb heading to Paris, and you've got to work out who is responsible for the bomb and speeding the train up. It's essentially an excuse for a meaningless argument, which is I've discovered I like a lot more and more to have a meaningless argument. Real confrontation, no interest, but a meaningless one, I'm into it.
Fair. So Monopoly's off the cards because that is just outright argument. That's not meaningless. That is families on the line.
Yeah, actually, the rest of my family do like Monopoly, so I have been dragged in once or twice. But I usually try and break the game in some way to make it more interesting for me. My brother used to play it with me as a kid, and I didn't really enjoy it then either, but he always used to get bored with the lack of spending power. So he would just issue £500 notes just every time he fancied it. But let's all give ourselves a grand payout, as if it was like living in some sort of like world where national debt wasn't a problem.
Yeah, sounds wonderful. If we could have that from the government. If you're listening, take note.
That was also the pandemic, if you remember rightly.
Yeah, true.
I mean, we did get like an extended holiday and got paid for it.
Do you think, obviously, had COVID sort of helped produce these games and give you the time to do so? Do you think if COVID hadn't have happened, that you would have still out with these? Do you think it would have happened at a later date, or do you think it's something that you would have just put on the back burner?
Yeah, difficult to say really, because it's often not even about time and resource. It's often about headspace. Like, to truly be creative, that comes in, not truly, that sounds a bit too philosophical, doesn't it? It's not,
Let's not go back there.
Like, for me personally, I find that comes in waves. And then sometimes I feel a frenzy of creativity and I feel productive and I can create and I can produce. And then I guess a bit like writer's block, suddenly you've got nothing for 6 months. And I don't know whether you kind of creatively get burnt out or not. So I don't know is the answer to the question. I like to think that yes, but it took a break from the business to make them. And I haven't taken a break from the business really properly since I've gone back to it post-pandemic for different reasons. So maybe the honest answer is no, I wouldn't have made them. But the ideas were there. Well, one of the ideas was there anyway.
The idea that it could have happened was there. And everybody did that during lockdown, though. They all went, shit, we can't do anything.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have written online escape rooms if we didn't have a pandemic and I had nothing to do because I was running an escape room.
I've been saying I'll write a book for more than a decade and I haven't written it. So, well, maybe it'll come.
Hopefully this mention of it's the little nudge that you need.
Yeah.
Slowly but surely.
What's your book about?
So I've got more than one book idea kicking around. In fact, a lot of ideas I have, I realise I'm working in the wrong medium. So Stop the Train, for example, started as an idea. Actually, it's actually my brother-in-law's idea. I have to credit him for a lot of it. Of a trivia game where there was bluffing involved, which I think has since been done by things like Big Potato Games, like games like Snakes and stuff. But the Hit the Silk. with my other game. Actually, that started as an escape room concept, and it was aborted as an escape room concept. And then when I started playing more card games, I kind of somewhere in the back of my mind was the story of Hit the Silk was still there, and I just converted it almost unknowingly into this card game. And I said to Kerry, like, what should I call this? And she said, "Well, obviously Hit the Silk." I was like, "Oh yeah, of course." I didn't realize that I'd been like feeding off this historic creative idea that I'd had. So that started as an escape room that I didn't make because I didn't think the semi-cooperative nature of it would work in an escape room. And it became a very silly card game, again, about meaningless arguments and odd amount of victimization. The plot for that game is you're on a plane that's dropping out of the sky and you've got one fewer parachutes than there are players. But you've got to work together to get enough money to pay off this casino debt. So it's a ridiculous B-movie plot. So the plane's falling out of the sky.
Sounds like a Fast and Furious.
Yeah, it's horrible B-movie cliche. But the kind of the meaningless arguments that it produces are actually very, very fun. And if you go on to a YouTube channel called No Rolls Barred, a couple of times they've played that on a Let's Play channel, they call it. I think it's got 120,000 hits or something, and it's actually meant I can sell some of the games. So yeah, it's a fun and kind of like meaningless argument. But go back to your question about the book. I had an idea for a board game called Run for Your Life, and as I started getting more and more into it, I thought, well, actually, does this actually make a better book? So I can't tell you what that was a dinosaur game as well. Of course, it's dinosaurs. I can't really tell you what my book's going to be about because I haven't really decided where it's going to land. I tried to collaborate actually at one point with the Detective Society, and I came up with a game for them, which I don't think they've ever used, which I'm trying not to feel insulted about, but probably because they're better at kicking around. But it was a really cool idea for a book. So I'm thinking maybe I just take that idea that was a kind of like an escape room in a box type product and make it into a book. So I think that the format of where an idea ends up is it'll find its own channel. It'll come out where it needs to come out.
That's ominous enough to be entertaining, but enough information to keep us teased and wanting more.
Yeah.
So that's the best way to do it as a well-trained author.
So, talking about your books and your escape rooms, if we could give you an unlimited budget to do whatever you wanted with, but it has to be around escape rooms, what are you creating?
Would it be a room? Would it be a tabletop game? Would it be a tabletop escape book?
Yeah, I think I would really struggle with this brief because my mind would be stimulated with too many ideas. Do I really want an unlimited budget? Because that means unlimited ideas, which means unlimited processing time thinking about the possibility of the ideas. So even just trying to answer the question throws me into a bit of a spin.
Maybe 250 grand. Let's put a cap on it there.
Well, it's not even the budget. It's more the open brief. It's like, what would you build if you can build anything? It's like irrespective of the budget. I think I would be interested in making something like the Truman Show, where one person is experiencing a different reality to everybody else. That would be an interesting escape room, I think.
I don't know if it's similar, but have you heard of You, Me, Bum Bum Train?
I have. And that sounds absolutely fascinating. I went in for the ballot this time round, but I missed out.
Same.
What I understand is you walk into a series of rooms where everyone else kind of crowds around you. And it's a bit like Quantum Leap, I guess, in that suddenly you're in a changing room and you have to impromptu give like a halftime speech to some American footballers. And then suddenly you're in a courtroom and then suddenly you're somewhere else.
Yeah, it sounds phenomenal.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant. I absolutely love that idea.
For anybody that doesn't know, as Brendan just mentioned there, you are essentially on your own. This is a solo experience. You can't do it with friends. Like, you go in as an individual and they just throw you into various scenarios. For example, a courtroom, or you could be leading a drug raid, or you could be doing something crazy, but you are fully immersed in it. Every other person in that scenario is an actor and they are waiting for your lead, which just sounds balmy. I mean, monetarily and logistically sounds crazy. I don't know how that concept even pans out, but like as an experience as a whole, my goodness, it sounds like an absolute dream. Also sounds very anxiety inducing.
Yeah, I think it would definitely challenge you as if you weren't familiar with improv. I think you would definitely fit out of your comfort zone quite quickly.
So in this Truman Show-esque escape room that we're creating with your unlimited budget. Obviously, Truman doesn't know that he's part of said show. Would you advertise this to friends and family to book somebody in so that they didn't know they were partaking in this escape room and then they just happen to find themselves in this environment and it unfolding? Or would this person opt into being part of it?
Yeah, we're kind of moving into like Michael Douglas the game territory there, aren't we? A bit. It's like
Very
does
much so.
the player know they're playing? Aspirationally, I think they would be unaware in the same way that Truman was for the kind of authenticity of the experience. I think it could be quite mind blowing or trauma instigating when you find out it's all
true.
So yeah, I haven't really put a lot of thought around it. It's the very top of my head thinking. I've actually remembered a second idea, which is a very, very low budget idea, which is not your brief, but I have an idea different one, which involves trying to protect a balloon from being burst across 60 minutes. And it was called Nick's birthday balloon. And it's a tribute to Nick Moran, who is the Phantom Peak and Time Run creative director, I think his role is. And it was born of an idea. We just texting, and I just floated it as an idea, and we continued the conversation a bit longer than we needed to. But essentially, you're going to have these 3 motorized kind of vehicles that look a little bit like something out of Sonic the Hedgehog, that are driving their way towards this innocent balloon. And you have to find a way to power down these 3 vehicles because the spike on the end of the machine will burst the balloon. And for example, I was actually in a pub in Islington with a few escape room world celebrities from back in the day. So Chris Dixon, who was the person who came up with the Exit Games map in the very early days. Ken Ferguson of the Logic escapes me, and a couple of other. I think Scott Nicholson was in the pub, so it was quite an all-star kind of lineup.
This is quite the cast.
Yeah, and I had no right being there at all. And Chris Dixon disappears from the pub for about 20 minutes and comes back holding a red balloon and says, "Great, let's test out your escape room." And I grabbed it from him and I said, like, give that to me. You're not having it. And I pulled it away. And as I pulled it away to defend it, I literally pulled it onto some sort of spiked object on the wall behind me.
No.
And the balloon just burst immediately. It's like, oh, that game's over then. And that was the moment I realised that maybe it doesn't work, that game, because if someone accidentally bursts the balloon 2 minutes in, it's kind of game over and fizzles out quite quickly.
When you initially said the concept of this idea, I assumed you meant you would proceed through various rooms where the room's sole purpose was to destroy your balloon. Like, there could be darts flying out of the walls, or there could be, like, I don't know, a laser system that you've got to go through, or that's what I thought you'd meant when you said protecting this balloon.
Oh, that's brilliant. You could maybe throw your body away to protect it. I'll take a dart for this balloon.
Yeah, it's like a presidential balloon.
It has its own perspex box.
Now, Mr. President, come on.
Or you've made the initial idea even better. You've given it a sequel now. You've given it something. You've made it like one of my board game movie plots out of this balloon escape room. So
you are welcome.
Yeah, Vin Diesel, if you want to take that one, you can start a lovely little balloon family, because everybody knows family's stronger than everything. Ugh, Fast and Furious,
It's
man, what a franchise. So, assuming that that's probably not in the plans for the future, are there any teasers that you can give us as to what plans are in the future? Whether that's for yourself or more specifically for the business, the escape rooms themselves, what are your plans?
Yeah, quite hard to answer that one. A bit of a crossroads at the moment. We're kind of at that cycle now where we've kind of just paid off the most recent game about 6 months after it's launched.
Well done.
So we need to kind of regenerate a bit more capital back into the business so that we can start investing in a new experience, which should happen across the next 6 months. So just from a business planning perspective, it's not immediately possible. So plans I've got in my head, as I alluded to earlier with how creativity works with me, is like I don't necessarily pin it to a particular format, but I have actually tasked my team with creating, we've got this spare small room in our building, and it's probably about 3 meters by 3 meters. And we built a game for Kettle Chips. The brand. It was like a PR launch to find out what flavor crisps were going to be featured. And at the end of the event, we inherited the assets. So I guess a little bit like roll up the barrel, we've ended up with all this stuff that's based on a kitchen that would really look right in about 2003. I've said to the team, look, we've got a room, we've got all these other kitchen assets. Go and make something, keep me out of it, go and have some fun as a team. I want you to harness your own creativity, and I want you to have like a sense of play and fun at work alongside all the the hosting, the maintenance, and all the day-to-day. And so I've left them to go and make that. So I've no idea what they're going to make. But I have got wind of a few ideas like that are like kicking around, and I've seen some notes. Like I've tried not to look at them, but one of them said meth kitchen, which is like, okay, great, not what I intended.
Nice, love that.
It's one way to get out of the 1940s.
I was going to say, is this a business proposition or an escape room?
Exactly. I mean, I guess it could do both, couldn't it, really?
Honestly, officer, it's an escape room. Look, there's puzzles on the wall. Ignore the real meth.
I mean, I used to carry around a deactivate the device game, and I was so terrified because it looks like a bomb.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's not something you want to get stopped with by the police.
No, absolutely not. Forget about meth kitchen.
Yeah, it's really immersive, officer. It's fine. It's just like make it feel real. But actually, it reminds me of your bomb story. Your device reminds me of a situation I had on a train coming back from Escape Plan one day. So I'm traveling and I'm ideating for Stop the Train, and I'm thinking about, I've got the core of the game, but I almost need some sort of intervention cards where you have a bit more like input into kind of like the twists and turns in the story and the plot. So we have these things called intervention cards, and they affect 2 or 3 different places in the game. So I'm writing a list of ideas down, and I've kind of like just got to a fresh page, and I thought, I've got a good idea. So I've written in slightly too large letters, hijack the train, ? The next thing happens is the ticket conductor is walking down the aisle of my carriage, leans over my shoulder and looks at my pad, which just says, hijack the train, ?
Oh no.
Which wasn't the easiest one to explain.
That is not okay.
I don't even think you could hijack a train anymore. Like, they're fully run by computers.
Yeah, but that sounds like a challenge now, Helena. So
Yeah. I have just given you a challenge. Oh no.
Yeah, sounds like a puzzle. You just given a puzzle to a man who loves puzzles. Yeah, you've just given a hijacking opportunity to a man who literally wrote a game about hijacking opportunities. I think if anyone's equipped for this, we've got the right guy.
So back to the question about what are your plans for the future. I've now got a plan for the future. Thank you, Helena.
Hijacking a train.
You're welcome.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
To clarify, for legal purposes, if this gentleman does decide to actually hijack a plane, we are in no way legally liable.
Well, it depends on your involvement, doesn't it, Corey? Because if you're actually part of the hijack, you are legally liable.
Yeah, I mean,
this whole podcast is actually a recruitment session. I'm just trying to work out.
Do we think they could break the puzzles? Maybe.
We'll bring that old woman who can rip a bank of switches up.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
I feel like they need to test like durability of games.
Yeah, She-Hulk over there. Absolute unit.
It has been an absolute delight to have you on the podcast. Where can our listeners find you?
We've got Instagram and Facebook and websites and things. So escapeplanlimited.com is the website, and our Instagram is probably the most active of our social media channels. Not that we're terribly active on it.
Well, Brendan, it has been an absolute pleasure. It has been
it's been
quite the conversation. 90% of this probably isn't going to make the edit because we rambled so much. No, it's been an absolute pleasure, and all of the answers that you've given have been incredibly thoughtful and incredibly interesting. So I can't thank you enough for both lending your time and giving some genuinely creative answers.
No, thank you very much for having me. It's been really nice.
And congratulations on having one of the longest standing escape games in the UK that is still proceeding to do absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, we're lucky with the traffic coming through London there. I think if we were in a smaller town, we would have changed it by now.
Well, real optimistic. It's been an absolute pleasure, as I've already mentioned. We can't wait to meet you at the IEN Summit in London, and we look forward to hopefully another 10 years of absolutely incredible games. For everybody listening, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure, as always. And if you would like to, please leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. If you do not wish to leave a 5-star review, just don't bother, you big meanie. It's not nice. But from me, Helena, and Brendan, we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
I'm just going to cut so much of this episode out without context, but leave your parts in where you answer, just to make you sound absolutely insane. Answering questions I never asked. That entire God section is just going to be a rant from your perspective of you talking about God, and we're going to completely remove any of mine and Helena's answers.
Yeah, that's great. I think, I mean, I like a meaningless argument, so it's actually going to be quite hard.
Yeah, really living that. This guy came onto our podcast and just shouted at us for 2 hours. We didn't even answer the questions.